I'm going to tell you a 4-step process for memorizing anything you want. Whether you're studying for an exam or you want to remember someone's name or number or the capital of a country, anything you want to memorize, this technique will help you. This is it. If you learn this technique and you practice and you use it, you'll be unstoppable. In fact, you probably already use this technique, but you just don't know it. So I call this technique the RAVE technique. It's not that kind of rave, but it's good that you have that imagery, and I'll explain why. So each of the letters in RAVE stand for something that you have to do in order to memorize things better. If you use this technique, you can memorize anything you want, but it just doesn't come that naturally. You have to practice this over and over. People think that you're born with an incredible memory. And in fact, some people are. Some people are genetically better at memorizing, and they're just better at remembering things and learning things. But for most of us, we need to practice. It's like a muscle that we have to develop. And this 4-step technique, the RAVE technique, is going to be your key. This is what you have to practice. This is what you have to utilize in order to memorize things. So I'm going to walk you through this 4-step process. Before I do, though, I want you to hit the subscribe button below right there so you can get notified when I post videos. I'm going to be posting videos every week. I know I've been MIA for a few years, but that's only because I had to. And I'll explain in other videos. If you're interested, you can go take a look. But I'm back now and I want to post regularly so that I can share with you some of the things that I've learned, not only in the past 6 years that I've been away, I guess, but also from my experience as an attorney in the past 10 years and just some of the experiences that I've gained in my life. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into it. Let's go through the RAVE process, RAVE technique, and see how we can use it to maximize our brain power. R in RAVE stands for repetition. Repetition helps you to remember. Repetition helps you to remember. Repetition helps, you get the point, right? The more we repeat something, the more likely that we're going to recall it in the future. So memorization, it's not about just repeating something over and over and over and then being able to say it at that moment, right? So we want things to go from our short-term memory, which is in the moment right now, what we're seeing right now and learning right now, into our long-term memory, which is being able to recall it in the future. And repetition is a tool that'll help you to remember things and to be able to recall them in the future. Now, it's not just about obviously repeating things over and over and over again. You're going to have to combine this R with the other 3 techniques that I'm going to talk about, but just know that repetition is key in helping you remember things and memorize things. Now, repetition doesn't have to be boring. You can make it interesting. You can write things on flashcards. You can have amazing imagery in your head and play it over and over like a movie. You can record your own voice and saying something and then repeating it. You can do it on your phone, in fact. So you can like record something on your phone and then keep listening to it over and over. So there are so many ways that you can actually make repetition a fun thing to do when you're trying to memorize something. Especially when it comes to your exams, you want to make it a little bit more interesting so that you actually use it and you take the full benefit from it. The A in RAVE stands for association. Now, we remember things when we associate them or link them with things that we already know. When we link things to things that we already know, it's going to make it easier for us to remember it. For example, let's say we want to learn the capital of France is Paris, right? We want to memorize that. So we link it to a Paris that we already know, which is, for me, Paris Hilton. And so that's how I link the 2 names together. Now, the technique is going to be obviously more complex when we get into, for example, terminology that we've never heard or things that we can't really link it to. And I can talk more about that in future videos. But for the sake of this video, I want to keep it on the surface. I want to just introduce you to these techniques so that you get an idea of what they are and how they can be used. So link something with something that you already know, and that'll help you remember it, memorize it faster. Another example, let's say you want to memorize a planet called Pluto. And what you can do is you can recall Pluto from the Disney cartoons, and you can link it to that, associated with that. So it's getting linked to something that you already know. Next is V, and V stands for visualization. Now, our brain are extremely visual. When we visualize things, we remember it faster and easier. If we just read a text or read something or hear something, it's not as powerful as if we visualize it. In fact, we do that often when we're reading a book. We visualize or we have imagery in our head of what we're reading. Now, the more details you have when you're visualizing something, the better. Now, remember, all of these steps are going to be working together for maximum effect. So, and I'll put them together at the end. But visualization essentially is visualizing something, and the more details that you can visualize, the better. Again, back to our example about Paris Hilton, Paris, the capital of France. You can visualize Paris Hilton in front of the Eiffel Tower. So that's a visualization. You can envision her holding a baguette, maybe even a baker's hat, standing in front of the Eiffel Tower with her signature look and, her pink outfit or whatever. So the more details that you actually visualize, the better that you're going to be able to recall this image in the future, and then recall what that image is linked to or associated with. So now let's get on to the last letter, and that's letter E. And letter E stands for exaggeration. You've got to make your images larger than life. The more exaggerated something is, the more out of this world, out of the norm something is, the better it is for your brain to retain it and for you to recall it in the future. So memorization works best when whatever you visualize is exaggerated, like to 100th degree. The more you exaggerate, the weirder, wilder something is, the better you're going to remember it. Just remember that. Now let's put all of them together with the exaggeration. Back to my example about the capital of France being Paris. So we said that we are associating Paris with Paris Hilton, and we visualize Paris Hilton in front of the Eiffel Tower, holding something, and then having, the details of, her clothing and her signature makeup and signature look with a baker's hat and a big baguette. Now in the exaggeration stage, you want to exaggerate this imagery. So for me, for example, I'm going to make Paris Hilton be as big as the Eiffel Tower. There's a big, 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 big Paris Hilton standing in front of the Eiffel Tower. She's holding a huge baguette in her hand. She can't even move. Maybe she's like trying to move and she's stumbling. And there's just a lot of like bread falling on, or like crumbs falling on people, and like people are screaming. So those are some of the things that you can do. Like you can exaggerate, and that is building upon that visual imagery that you also have. So that visualization also gets cemented. And the more you repeat this image, once you have like a fixed image in your head, the more you repeat it over and over, the better you're going to remember it, the more likely that you're going to be able to memorize it and recall it in the future. So when you put everything together, you have to repeat things to remember them. It's important to link the thing that we want to remember or associate it with something that we already know, and then visualize or have an imagery associated with that, with the thing that we've linked, or the word or whatever that we want to memorize and remember, and then exaggerate it as much as possible. And then do this over and over, repeat it over and over. So if you use this technique and you practice this technique, you can really memorize anything you want. It can get a little bit complicated, and it can, remembering different things may require tweaking some of the steps here, but it really does come down to these 4 steps. Memorizing anything just comes down to these 4 steps. And again, you're probably already doing this when you're memorizing things, and for the things that you have memorized and know about or are easy for you to recall, you've probably done this, but maybe you haven't done like the exaggeration part to this extent or this consciously or with intention. But knowing this technique is going to help you to actually consciously do the steps so you can remember what you want to remember. One of the ways that I remember I used to memorize things in law school was, for example, if I wanted to remember the elements of a crime, for example, I would turn those elements, I would look at the first letter of the elements and then turn that first letter into a word, and then do this technique where I'm raving, basically the rave technique for that letter, and then the next letter and the next letter, and then link them together with a visualization that kind of had a story with all of them involved. And if they had to come one after another, maybe a story that was linked together. This may seem like a lot of steps in the beginning, but trust me when I tell you, the more you practice this, the better you'll get. And it'll just become second nature to you. Whenever you want to remember things or memorize something, you are just going to go through this step without even realizing it. But you have to practice it. So do practice it with easier, simpler stuff, and then move on to more advanced stuff. I really hope this is helpful for you, and I'd love to learn in the comments something that you've memorized using the RAVE technique and what you've associated with, visualized, and how you exaggerated. So go ahead and comment in the comments below. Be sure to like this video and hit the subscribe button, and I will see you soon.